Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
Hello and welcome to Living on the Edge. This week we travel to the Sariska Tiger Reserve where illegal mining continues despite Supreme Court notifications to investigate the consequences of ignoring environmental safeguards. We also analyze the effects of noise on our health and report on successful water harvesting in Gujarat. Despite the April 93 Supreme Court ban on marble mining in Sariska, it still flourishes both inside and outside the Tiger Reserve. When Sunil Manoharan visited the area, he found that agricultural fields have become dumping grounds, that farmers have been alienated from traditional occupations, and that the habitat of the protected tiger has shrunk considerably. Here's his report.
Till the late 80s, Tilwadi was like any other Rajasthani village. In fact, it was perhaps more favorably placed, with functional wells and sufficient agricultural land to sustain its inhabitants. But that's not all. The village was also surrounded by thick forests which extended into the Sariska Tiger Reserve. And yet, in less than 5 years, Tilwadi and its environs have been so progressively degraded that the area is fast approaching its ecological doom. It was the discovery of marble deposits close to the surface that first attracted miners to the area. The lure of profits proved overpowering, and as always, environmental concerns took a back seat. The villagers themselves proved to be cheap and readily available labor to work the mines and quarries. With incomes rising, one would have expected the area to prosper, but instead of fueling balanced development, mining has not only destroyed the environment, but also dislocated the self-sufficiency of the villagers.
जब खान नहीं थी, आप गांव के लोगों से जाके पूछिए, उनकी हालत कितनी अच्छी थी। उनको खाने को अच्छा मिलता था, उनको पीने को दूध मिल जाता था, पहनने को कपड़े मिल जाते थे, रहने के लिए मकान था। ये सारा एरिया किसी न किसी ज़माने में यहाँ जो मूल आदिवासी रहते हैं, उनकी गोचर थी। उनकी गाय भैंस इस सारे क्षेत्र में चरती थी। लेकिन जब से माइनिंग शुरू हुई तो गाय भैंस तो चरने की जगह रही नहीं। जहाँ गाय भैंस चरती थी वहाँ सारे ओवरबर्डन्स पड़े हैं या वहाँ खड्डे खड्डे हो गए। तो जहाँ से वहाँ के पशुओं को घास, चारा, पानी सब मिलता था, वो सब तो खत्म हो गया।
Perhaps the most tangible effect of mining is the fall in the water level. Villagers argue that the pumping of water out of open cast mines has resulted in the virtual drying up of the wells.
जो पानी हमारे काम खेती के लिए आता है, उस पानी को उस खानों से निकाल के बेकार बेच देते हैं। तो ये सबसे भयंकर नुकसान हुआ कि हम यहाँ के इलाके गरीब लोग इतना गहरा कुआं कहाँ तक करें, क्योंकि खाने वाले तो गहरी करते जा रहे हैं।
Added to the problem of a decreasing water supply is the indiscriminate dumping of excavated matter on agricultural land. Apart from the adverse impact on farming, which is destroying the livelihood of the villagers, large areas of pasture land have also been laid waste. Dairy production has been severely reduced. Not surprisingly, the forest cover of the Aravalis, which was 18% at independence, is today just 3%.
मैं जब 10-15 साल का था तब से मैं मेरे दादाजी के साथ में घूमा करता था और यहाँ रहा करते थे हम। शाम को घर 6 बजे बाद में कोई आना जाना नहीं होता था। यहाँ बहुत भारी जंगल था। ये सामने जो पहाड़ दिख रहा है आपको, इसमें इतना तगड़ा जंगल था कि आपसरी में अपना आपसरी में नहीं दिख सकते उनको।
जर्क भी आते थे, न्याली भी आते थे और जम्मूराज भी आते थे। बहुत जानवर घूमते हैं, अब भी घूमते हैं, पर कोई ऐसा है 5 साल में एक बार बस।
Living on the edge was prevented from filming and even speaking to the workers. In fact, mining was stopped when we arrived, and most of our filming was clandestine. Our camera only revealed that mining has not only degraded the environment, but is also taking a toll on quarry workers. Diseases like silicosis and silicotuberculosis caused by inhalation of dolomite dust in large quantities while drilling was widespread. One estimate goes so far as to say that every worker develops one form of silicosis or another after 5 years at the mine.
टीबी का आज इलाज है, कैंसर का भी इलाज है, लेकिन सिलिकोसिस का आज कोई अभी तक कोई इलाज नहीं है। उसका रीज़न ये है कि वो रेस्पिरेटरी सिस्टम को इस तरह से ब्लॉक करती है कि उसको फिर खोलने के लिए कोई दवाई नहीं है।
Miners, of course, are vehement in their denial of these allegations.
जो ब्लॉक माइनिंग करेंगे ना, उसमें तो वाटर बेस चलता है ना, पानी चलता है ना, मशीन चलेगी, मशीन के ऊपर पानी का फ्लो चलता है। ये टैंकर्स वगैरह रखते हैं हम पानी के, तो उससे क्या धूल आने का सवाल ही नहीं है ना।
These protestations, however, did not stop the Tarun Bharat Sangh from filing a court case against the miners. The Supreme Court banned all mining activity in the area in April 1993. The judgment also took cognizance of the fact that mining was being carried out in the Sariska Forest Reserve, which was presumably a protected area. Strangely enough, the miners have bypassed the ruling, taking advantage of contradictory government notifications. Some claim that the Tiger Reserve covers 1,145 square kilometers, while others insist it's just 800 square kilometers. Confusion, perhaps, is deliberate, for as long as there is uncertainty, mining continues unabated.
सारे के सारे ज़्यादातर राजनेता और आईएएस ऑफिसर और पूंजीपति सब जो पैसे वाले हैं वो सब तो इसमें मिले हुए हैं, और चाहे विधानसभा हो और चाहे संसद हो, उसमें भी जो लोग बैठे हैं वो तो सब माइनिंग लॉबी के इशारे पे और माइनिंग लॉबी के ही आदमी हैं। तो अब कितनी स्ट्रॉन्ग है ये मैं कोई मेरे पास मापदंड नहीं है बताने का, लेकिन ये मर्जियाँ है जो कर सकते हैं। ये मर्जियाँ हैं तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट के आदेश की धज्जियाँ उड़ा सकते हैं।
A certain amount of decisiveness is called for. What has intervened is elections, lobbying, looking at the environmental questions, and yet the controversy goes on.
While it is impossible to expect mining to be impervious to electoral politics, given the power of the labor and ownership lobbies, there are other questions that need to be answered. Mine owners, for instance, argue that villagers gain an additional income from work in the mines. Environmentalists, on the other hand, argue that it's mining that has destroyed rural self-sufficiency and caused poverty. Voluntary agencies are now building dams to check water runoff, regenerate the land, and provide alternate employment. Despite these efforts, few realize the long-term damage that has been caused to the Aravalis, which are the last barrier to the expanding desert of Rajasthan. Besides, it's the Aravalis that have helped preserve biological reserves like Sariska. The degradation of these ancient hills will not only aid the advance of the desert, destroy agriculture, and drastically alter the lives of the people, but also question the very survival of the tiger, supposedly protected in the area.
When I went to Sariska, on the 2 occasions that I did go, I kept looking for my client. My client, of course, was the tiger. I never saw him. But I knew he was there, and I knew that as long as he was there, the entire pyramid that the tiger is the apex of will be there and protected.
It's not just the tiger that's under threat, but an entire ecosystem and a way of life, which, though not exotic, has sustained lakhs of people and varied wildlife over the years. Today, even protected areas are not safe from the depredations of man. As mining continues incessantly, short-term considerations ignore environmental needs. But for how long?
The plight of Dolomite-scarred Sariska seems to be falling on deaf ears, and perhaps that has something to do with the noise pollution that's plaguing our everyday lives. Although many of us, particularly in the cities, are so habituated to noise that we take it for granted, it can have disastrous consequences on our well-being. Amitabh Shukla reports.
Six-year-old Deepa appears normal, but she suffers from a disability that affects thousands of children at birth: deafness. It's at schools such as Pramilabai Chavan Deaf and Dumb School that they learn to cope with their handicap and join the mainstream. But deafness is not just an affliction some people are born with. More and more people, particularly in urban India, are having their hearing seriously impaired by the noisy environment in which they work and live.
हमारे जो बच्चे हैं हमारे यहाँ जो है इन्होंने लिप रीड करके हियरिंग एड लगा के ऐसे इन्होंने अपने को बड़ा करना है और उनके लिए जो कुछ करना है हम सब कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जो बाहर के बच्चे हैं, नॉर्मल बच्चे हैं या बड़े लोग हैं, उनके कान की रक्षा करने के लिए ने हमने ज़रूर कड़े कदम उठाने चाहिए। जो घर से बाहर इतने आवाज़ होते हैं, ट्रैफिक है, बाकी म्यूज़िक है, सब सारे आवाज़ ही आवाज़ है कि जो बड़े हमारे लिए ख़तरनाक साबित होते हैं।
If you think that's an overstatement, just ask yourself how often you enjoy undisturbed peace and quiet, particularly in the city. Although noise pollution is not confined to urban India, it's in the cities that it acquires cacophonous proportions. And of all the sources of noise, from construction activity to loudspeakers, traffic noise is the most worrisome.
Whereas industrial noise is confined, is localized in and around the industrial areas, but the traffic noise is being carried literally throughout the whole habitat. Vehicles crisscross the roads, and a major source of noise today is what we call vehicular noise or the traffic noise.
To see exactly how much noise traffic actually makes, Living on the Edge conducted its own test on one of Delhi's busy roads.
We are standing on this road and we are recording the ambient noise level because of the traffic. This is being measured with the help of a decibel meter. The average noise level is around 87 decibels. Now the peak noise level has shot up to 103 decibel.
If you're wondering how much that is, let's just say that sleep is disturbed by a sound of 35 decibels, that conversation takes place at 60, and a jet plane at 50 feet tips the scale at 120 decibels. But how exactly does noise affect us? Is it only our hearing that gets gradually impaired, or are there other physiological and psychological effects of prolonged exposure?
The average man, if he is exposed to very loud noise, can get hearing loss, he can get headaches, he can get nervousness, he can get ill digestion, and if it is exposed for a long time, he can get rise of blood pressure, he can become nervous and tense, and he will feel weak. When this sound enters your body, it is not seen, it does not cause any heat, it does not cause any smell. It enters only as a sound in the ear, and it is not perceived as a threat by a common man.
As a consequence, noise was included as an environmental pollutant in the Environmental Protection Act of 1986. Today, permissible levels of noise are determined by statute.
But despite this, studies have shown that noise levels in our cities are only increasing. And perhaps the greatest noise polluters are average citizens who show scant regard for government regulations.
आपको बताया गया है कि हॉस्पिटल के पास, स्कूलों के पास आवाज़ नहीं होना चाहिए, फिर कोई मानता ही नहीं है। जहाँ बोर्ड लगे हैं, साइलेंट जोन बनाए हुए हैं पुलिस ने, वो भी कोई देखता नहीं, मानता नहीं है।
If the public wants noise and is not yet conscious of reducing it, then it is unlikely that any amount of legislations can help. I mean, if the people want to have children, they will go on having children, whatever you may say for family planning.
Legislation, after all, can't change attitudes. Change is dependent on individual restraint and the spread of consciousness about the ill effects of noise. Perhaps it's the hustle and bustle of our everyday lives that makes us forget how peaceful silence really is. Not everyone has the time or the inclination to seek quietude, but those who do will almost certainly find it calming. After all, the sounds of silence can be very alluring.
A little over 100 kilometers from Ahmedabad in Dholera, a unique experiment in rainwater harvesting has met with remarkable success. And yet, just a few years ago, even a bucket of water was a luxury. Gauri Maini reports.
A few years ago, this was how some villagers in coastal Gujarat had to fight for a bucket of water. Endless waiting, frayed nerves, and a limited supply of the precious liquid led to bitter and acrimonious disputes. Often, all the victor gained was a few drops of water. Small wonder then that the area is called Nirpanya, meaning no water.
First thing that just strikes you is the vastness of that land, which is extremely saline tracts. I mean, for kilometers and kilometers, you can see nothing, not a single tree and all that. And other thing that you can see, especially in summer, are mirages. Everywhere you will find there's water, and there won't be any water.
Yes, this area, as I told you, it's a part of the inherent saline area. It's a part of that. That means it was once upon a time covered with the sea.
With salinity being a natural phenomena here, even the groundwater available just 1 inch below the surface is rendered undrinkable, for it contains thrice as much salt as seawater. And during the summer months, that too dries up, leaving the villagers to a terrible plight. Their struggle for drinking water was endless. The searing heat gave them no respite, and sometimes, in desperation, they drank anything they found, whatever the source.
We used to drink water collected in the village pond, and the same water was used by cattle and dogs, which is why there was a lot of disease and infection. Our village has lost a lot of children because of this.
કેટલા છોકરા હમણાં મોટા મોટા અવડા નવડા ગુજરી ગયા એમાં રોગમાં 12 વર્ષનો મારે છોકરો વયો ગયો હમણાં 12 વર્ષનો રોગ થઈ અને 12 વર્ષના પેટમાં જમાવટ થઈ ગયો જામી ગયું પાણી એટલે છોકરાને રોગ થઈ ગયો એટલે બે ત્રણ
I lost my grandson, who was 12 years old, because he contracted some disease due to water. We took him to Bhavnagar. He was in the hospital for a day. Next day, we brought him home and he was no more. If we had money, we could have given him better treatment. But since we don't have money, we are helpless.
What makes this worse is that these villages are actually connected to the regional water supply scheme, which supplies water through pipelines or tankers. But more often than not, water does not reach them.
ये पाइपलाइन तो 10 વર્ષ था टूटी थी
After the pipeline broke down, we told the authorities many times to get it repaired or to get a new one, but in vain.
Instead, the water board suggested tankers as an alternative. But the quota of 8 litres per person could in no way meet rural needs. Fed up with bureaucratic indifference, villagers decided to take matters into their own hands. They realized that a solution to their water problem would transform their lives and make migration unnecessary.
આખો જે તળાવનો વિચાર છે એ ભાનગઢ ને મિંગલપુરની બહેનો કારણ કે એ બાજુના વિસ્તારમાં પાણીની મુશ્કેલી બહુ જ હતી.
The women of Mingalpur and Bhangarh are behind this. These women had to migrate 8 months a year due to scarcity of water, and they were laborers where a canal was being dug up. There they had this idea that if a pond was dug up in their village for water storage with a plastic sheet at the bottom, summer months would be no problem.
That was how an ancient technique was reborn, that of rainwater harvesting. By deepening and cleaning existing ponds and lining them with plastic, storage of rainwater became possible. The plastic prevented the mixing of saline groundwater with rainwater, and channels made it easier for rainwater to run into the ponds. In fact, all details were looked into. Even a filter was connected to the pond to reduce bacterial infections in the water. Today, there are over 18 ponds in the villages.
આપણે સગવડતા તો હારામ હારી વિધિ આ પીવામાં બહુ માફક આવે પાણી અને આમ શાંતિ.
Strangely enough, the success of the ponds has become the focus of controversy. Mr. A.G. Desai of the Water Supply Board insists that the salinity of the soil causes water in the ponds to become salty.
Our main problem is that the water which is collected in the pond, it itself is a saline, and due to evaporation, the water which is left in the pond will becoming more and more saline.
Mr. Desai also argues that because saline groundwater is so close to the surface, the depth of the pond is reduced. This, he says, leaves very little water after evaporation. But NGOs question this, insisting that there is enough drinking water to tide over the summer months.
Okay, even if somebody argues that, you know, bacterially, I mean, this water is not really potable, I think that if there is water, there are, I mean, it is an opening. Compare it with a condition when there was absolutely no water. And that is what people are saying, that right now we are surviving because there is, even if from your standard, this water is not potable, you are not giving us water at all.
Although there are no easy answers, independent experts believe that by avoiding storing water from the first few showers, salinity in the ponds can be reduced. Rain collected later would still contain salt from the earth, but far less than what groundwater exploitation would provide.
The drinking water needs less than 500 parts of a million parts, while this water is 1000 to 1500, but it can be drunk because the other water available in the Bhal area is having 3000, 4000 parts per million parts.
Technical arguments aside, the drinking water shortage across the country has reached alarming proportions. At one end of the spectrum, we have cities that are pampered with an unlimited supply and are recklessly depleting groundwater reserves.
At the other end, we have places like Dholera, where a bucket of clean water is a luxury, where the search for water defines human existence, and where rainwater collection is perhaps the only option. These ponds seem to be the answer to all their problems. Migration has been reduced, their cattle give more milk, and education for their children is now possible. Besides, creating and managing a source of water at the village level is a significant first step in the empowerment of villages to run their own lives. Although no one knows what tomorrow will bring, their newfound confidence may yet help them triumph over future adversity.
The fly is responsible for causing more human illness than all other insects and animals put together.